Hola, mi amigo.
I'm Ryan.
And I am Jake.
And together, for the first time, we are functionally literate.
Yeah.
Although, I guess, actually, if you want to get technical about it, you've been here the whole time.
Have I? In the background?
Yeah. Every episode. Who starts off the episode? You. It's
True.
Yeah.
It is me. That is me.
So for all you folks at home, this is the Jake Weller. Seriously, I do love that intro. I jam to it every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I jam to it too. It's very sad. I am the person that listens to their own music in the car. That is who I am. That is what I do. I am my number one fan on Spotify. I think 1 year, the playbacks that they do at the end of the year where they do your end of year wrap up. I think I was one of my own top artists.
Hey, if it makes you feel better, you were also my top artist.
It does make me feel better. It makes me feel less alone. It's slightly more degrading for me, but
No, but I get what you mean though, because in my analytics for the podcast, Spotify for podcasters is also included in the analytics, and so the only person that could possibly be is me. And for a very long time, I was 20% of my own audience.
Yeah, that happens. That happens. I was on my website the other day, and I started I was actually on my website in one window, and then I got a notification on my phone coming through telling me someone's on your website, and I sent a message being hey, can I help you with anything? And it was to me. I was like, fuck.
Oh, no. Okay. So
anyway, there's a book. We were reading a book.
Today, we are discussing 14 by Peter Clines, chapters 0 through 6, narrated by Ray Porter. Ray Porter is one of my favorite narrators. Honestly, if I see that Ray Porter narrated a fantasy or sci-fi book, that's a pretty good indicator that I'm gonna get it.
To be fair, the narration, because I'm listening to the audiobook, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's I'm enjoying it. It is one of the better narrated books that I've been listening to. I recently started listening to a different book as well, which I'm not I'm just touching on the narration. It's really, really not the one. There's been a couple of them where I've stopped listening to a book because I'm the narration is too bad.
There was only ever one book that I could not listen to because of the narration. I don't think I've ever actually talked about this on the podcast, but I do discuss it whenever in person I'm discussing bad narrators.
Yeah.
So there's this young adult series that I read in high school called The Gone series by Michael Grant.
Okay.
So it's it's Gone, and then Hunger, and then Lies, and then Plague, and then Fear, and then Light. So it's it's about, it basically is this. So you remember Under the Dome by Stephen King?
No.
Okay. Well, that was going to be a way to compare. But basically, this dome that's a 20-mile radius just appears in this place in California. And the town that's in the dome is on the edge of the dome. The center of the dome is this power plant. And everyone 15 and older disappears.
Oh, damn.
And when people turn 15, they disappear. And then there's also, it's really fucking weird. There's mutant animals, and some of the kids have superpowers, and it's it's like a superpowered Lord of the Flies.
Oh God.
Yeah. And so it's really fucking fun. And you can't listen to the audiobooks. I defy any of you to try listening to the audiobooks.
I might just go listen.
You might, yeah. Then you might realize it's a mistake because so the narrator, he's fine. He sounds fine, except whenever he says the words "said" or "says." You know, because it'll be like so and so turned and said, blah 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 blah.
Oh, jeez.
Every fucking time he says the word "said," he says it like "said." It is so jarring. It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I stopped listening. I feel like I'm pretty sensitive to, like poor audio, like voiceovers. And so there was like one book that I stopped listening to just because the guy's voice was too nasally. I was like, too nasally, can't do it. Sounds like he's just holding his nose the whole time. I was like, it's grinding me. I know. Anyway, there is a book that we are currently reading, 14.
This
very
one,
nice.
Which is very good narration.
It is very good narration. Did we mention that the narration is good?
This is one of those books, it's so hard to tell people about. Like, I was fortunate with you, because you said, like, if you wanted to come on here, you wanted to discuss a horror book. And so we talked about maybe doing House of Leaves, but because it's not an audiobook, you weren't for it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So I suggested this book, and the only thing I told you is the only thing I tell anybody, which is this guy in LA moves into an unusually cheap apartment, and then weird stuff starts to happen.
Yes.
That
Which,
was
based on that, yeah, well, based on that, I was like, is it ghosts? I was like, what is this? But I mean, how far we've gone in, I don't know if it's ghosts or not. It doesn't strike me as ghosts. Maybe it is.
Strike you as ghosts.
No, it doesn't strike me as ghosts.
Okay, well, let's jump into it. So it actually starts with
Foundation, Chapter 0. How a wounded gentleman fled from the family.
I have just popped open a beer. Let's get started. So, Chapter 0, it's like literally less than a minute long. It is it's this very brief scene of a man who he's been stabbed and he's running away, and he's thinking to himself that the family can't get him. And that's pretty much it.
Isn't he a doctor?
Is he?
That might have been mentioned. There's a suggestion that he's a doctor in there, which is one of the things I noted. Because I've honestly, I got hooked into the book to a degree because we're only going so far ahead between recording of episodes.
Yeah, so for posterity, we are recording up to Chapter 13. This episode, we're going to be doing chapters 0 through 6.
Yeah.
So you're only up to chapter 13.
I am. And I would hit chapter 13, and then I would instantly restart. Because, literally, because I wanted to keep going, and I've analyzed without taking notes. I wasn't taking because I was driving most of the time where I was listening to it. But yeah, I've been very much restart. So I've listened to each chapter up to 13 about 8-9 times now. So it's,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
You could have listened to the entire book in that amount.
Yes, absolutely. I could have. I could have done the whole book, but instead I repeated chapters 0 to 13.
Well, I'm thrilled that you held yourself back, because part of my excitement about doing this book with you is just asking you questions so who do you think the family is?
I don't know. See, this is I remember this is the joy of going back and listening as well, because I totally, after my first listen through, I totally forgot about how the book started. And well, I didn't completely forget, but my understanding of how the book started by the end of chapter 13 was that the person at the beginning was Nate. And then I was like, I'm waiting for Nate to get stabbed. And then when I went back and listened and I realized that it wasn't, I was more intrigued. And I wanted to keep going more, The family, I have
get you.
no idea who the family are. I reckon so here would be my theory, right?
I want to hear your wild guess. Yeah.
Okay, here's I got a couple of wild guesses about this whole building, right? About the whole vibe that they've got going on, right? One is that there's a bunch of gremlin people living in the walls, right? And that's who the family are. It's like
family is gremlin people. Okay.
Yeah, they're like gremlin people, and they're like living in this building, right? And so that was kind of like in behind like the locked doors, and like, you know, or maybe the family is like sorry, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself now, but yeah, I think the family is potentially like hiding in the building somewhere, you know.
Okay, I get
That's
you.
my
Chapter 1. How a poor man called Nate lucked into a cheap studio apartment near Hollywood.
So, in this chapter, we are introduced to our protagonist, who you've mentioned, Nate.
Yes.
What do you think of Nate?
I think Nate is perfectly average for the story. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty, you know.
He is the everyman.
Yeah, he's very, very plain, you know.
Yeah.
But his inner dialogue is very like, it's quite normal, like person vibes, you know. It's like, and
He's
there's
just a
like
guy.
he is, and it's the right level of intrigue as well that most people would have to like the stuff that's happening, you know. And it's like common situations as well. And he's like, he just does a data entry job, you know. He's not really any special kind of person, and he's just looking for somewhere to live.
In this first chapter, he's at some work thing. It's like he wouldn't consider it just getting a couple beers, but he wouldn't consider it a party either. Like, it's kind of an in-between thing.
Yeah.
And like, he's so not interested. Like, the few conversations he has with people, like, he doesn't even bother afterwards. Like, he realizes, oh shit, I don't know their names. But you know what? That's fine. The conversations are so boring. They're not worth remembering.
Yeah, and they're all apparently like super pretentious, aren't they? They're like all movie industry, like that's fair. I mean, I don't really know LA. Like, I understand what LA is, but like, you know, I don't really know.
I've never been to LA, but my dad in his younger years, like when he was in his like 20s and 30s, like I think it was like his late 20s, early 30s, he lived in LA. And like I found this out when I was like 11. And I was like, what? You lived in Los Angeles? What was that like? He was like, it sucked. I fucking hated it.
Yeah.
He was like, everyone is pretentious and the traffic is awful and it smells. It's just no good.
I mean, that is what people say about it, you know. that's what I've heard anyway.
Yeah. And well, so Nate, he's talking to this guy who he only knows as the journalist with the hot redhead girlfriend.
Yes.
Which I love that. And he mentions to this journalist that he's looking for a new place because his old roommates, one of them's getting married and one of them's moving back to San Francisco. And so he's just like, all right, I need a new place. And the guy's like, oh, well, what are you looking for? And he's like, well, I'd like to continue to live near Hollywood. I've got about an $800 budget. And so the guy's like, hey, there's like this really cheap place that I think would be perfect for you. And he's like, the figure thrown out, as I recall, was like $550.
Yes, yeah, $550, which is insane. I mean, so this is like, so this this made me go, when was this book based? Right, and I started like, I was like, what? Because he said originally he was like 800. He was looking for a place for $800.
Yeah, that was his budget. Was 800.
And I'm like, that is so cheap. 800 is cheap for LA, right? For LA, like I can only imagine that LA is like got to be similar to, I don't know, like London in the UK or like Manchester or something. Like probably expensive, you know? And like I'm going, how far back is this? And at first, 2012, which is what were the prices of house back then?
So I did the math. So the figure thrown out in the book was $550 for rent, including all the utilities.
Yeah.
The book was published in 2012. So if we assume that the book takes place in the same year, 12 years of inflation would put that figure at, I popped the number into an inflation calculator online, and I got $751.11. Jake, that is about $35 less than my mortgage, and my mortgage payments do not cover utilities.
Yeah, that is wild. That is crazy. That is.
And I live in Missouri, which is far cheaper to live than LA.
I know. That's like, I don't know. It's just wrong. And I was so confused. I was like, is this? Because even when he said 800, I was like, is this like the 60s? You know, I was like, when is this book based? You know, and then it's like they talk about flat screen TVs and, you know, PlayStations. And then he I think later on he says that he turned like 30 in 2010, and I was like, when is this book based?
Yeah.
When is it, you know? So yeah.
So he's so Nate is 32 here.
Yeah, he would be.
Yeah. Literally getting a studio apartment like in LA for that price, it's literally too good to be true. In my notes originally I put it's almost too good to be true. No, it's too good to be true.
Yeah, you actually like, you can't get a room in a shared house for that amount with utilities included. Like, you know, I've actually been looking. So I'm moving recently, so I've been like genuinely I've been looking at like rent and stuff in the UK at the moment, and I'm only like moving to Bristol,
right,
which is like it's a relatively big city, but it's not like, you know, a major. And it's I think someone was like £900 for a room with all bills included. I was like, for a room in someone else's house. Just the room. I'm like, no, getting like, getting an apartment would be wild. That is just unfathomable at this point.
There is one downside the guy mentions. Like, and it's not even really a downside. He's just like, I will warn you, it's got kind of a weird vibe.
To be fair, I think the next question that was asked at that point was like, do you mean the building or do you mean the area? Which I think is like a very like normal question to ask. And the fact that it was the building, you know, is like very, I don't know. I'd have a lot of questions about this building if someone was like, you know, the building just was unsettling.
Yeah. No, but Nate's just like, he doesn't give a shit because all he's thinking about is that sticker price. True. I guess the question is, if this was put to you, like if you found yourself in a similar situation, like just some guy you met at a party was like, no, you could get like a place for like £700.
Oh, I'd go.
In Bristol, it's got a kind of weird vibe though.
I'd go. I'd go 100. I'd go. Yeah. I'd be gone. I'd be like, give it to me. I'm taking it. Give it to me. Give me the room. You know, I'm taking it. Chapter 2. How Nate was shown a tour of the building by Tony the realtor.
So, what was your impression of Tony?
So I got weird vibes. I got such Darjo vibes from Tony. Yeah, it was like the consistently fake smile, and like, you know, it's hard to tell whether that's just she's like just trying to sell the place, you know, or whether she kind of like understands what's so dodgy about the place and like what's so weird about it. I can't tell. I couldn't tell, and I've gone back and I've listened like to it a couple of times. Yeah, multiple times. But yeah, I still can't quite peg whether or not she's she's in on whatever weirdness is going on and understands it. Also, she lied about the elevator, which is just brutal. That's so brutal.
Yeah. So in this chapter, she shows Nate like around the building. She kind of tells him like, there's 22 units, 8 on the first floor, 6 on the second floor, 8 on the third floor. There's an elevator, but it doesn't work. And she's like, by the time you move in, it should be working. Spoilers, no, it doesn't.
Yeah. Never worked. Not for a day. Yeah.
Above the front door, Kavach is stenciled.
Yeah.
And like there's a lounge on the second floor. There's like a laundry room, like just off the lobby in the first floor.
Oh,
that kind of thing.
Here's a note. Here's something I did a little bit of research on. Do you know what Kavach means?
What does Kavach mean?
It means armor.
Armor.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for that to become relevant at some point. I'm hoping it does. That would be very, yeah.
Okay.
So, because they suggest, I'll save it for later, actually, for when we're talking about later chapters. But they mention they mention the name a little bit, and so I was like, I'll look into that. But yeah, it means armor.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's interesting. So he's shown the building, and then like she tells him like he'll need to pass a credit check, he'll have to pay a security deposit, first and last month's rent. She says there's been a slight increase in the rent, and he's like, okay, how much? And she's like, $565.
Crazy.
So in today's money, in U.S. dollars, that is $771.60. That's still less than my mortgage. That's like $15 or $16 less than my mortgage.
Yeah. I would literally. I would snatch this, but I don't care about the vibes. I'd move into number 5. I'd move into number 5.
Spoilers. We'll get into number 5.
Yeah. So during as well, while they're going through, this was the first time they mention room number 14 is during this sequence.
Very briefly, yeah. Like he sees the door, but like they skirt past it very quickly.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure they even like describe what the door looks like.
Yeah, they do a little bit. So they mention like the 2 padlocks that are on the door, but that's about it. And it kind of like it giving off a bit of a weird vibe, and because he was just not really paying attention, and he blew past it.
No, I mean he was being shown a whole building.
Yeah. And then he gets to the room. Yeah,
he's shown number 28, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's it's a studio apartment. He thinks it looks great. He's
with
like,
an immaculate view.
With an immaculate view, yeah.
Apparently,
like, he can see the Hollywood sign to the left when he looks out the windows.
Wild.
Yeah. And so then, like, the chapter ends with him spotting a cockroach. And Tony is very apologetic about it. She's like, yeah, we get exterminators in here every other month, but we can just never seem to kill the bastards.
I mean, I doubt that very much. Based on the elevator, I don't think that's true.
But the thing that stands out to Nate, and that's just kind of how the chapter ends, he's like, no, but was that cockroach green?
Yeah. Green cockroaches. Yeah.
Green cockroaches. And so this is kind of the end of what's considered the foundation, which I think kind of makes sense. Like these are like they're basic chapters, but they are foundational. Chapter 0 establishes, hey, some weird shit's going on. Chapter 1 establishes, hey, our protagonist needs a place. Chapter 2 is like, hey, here's the place.
Yeah, and I think that this slow build for me, to be honest, was a little bit mundane. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I felt like it was moving very slow. Even going into the chapters after this for a little while, I was waiting for enough breadcrumbs to be laid for me to gain, like a built investment into what's gonna happen next, if that makes sense.
But it clearly worked because
it did.
You're invested now.
I am.
First story. Chapter 3. How Nate moved into apartment number 28, and how he met two neighbors and the super.
So this chapter is interesting because it focuses on a different point of view, which is, from what I recall, that doesn't happen very much in this book. The point of view doesn't shift very much from Nate.
I found it very jarring, I'm not gonna lie. During like the first read through, I was like, what? Because it showed like, I don't know, I guess it did show a different perspective in the first like foundation, you know?
Yeah, in chapter 0.
In chapter 0.
But I mean, that was more like a prologue than anything. So
exactly.
It was odd here.
Yeah, it was a bit jarring, but I guess it kind of like, it did give a lot of insight into the character's like mindset and kind of like her views and why she sees things the way that she does and what a character's
so
like.
We get Mandy. And
poor Mandy.
Mandy is it's just, I feel bad for her. I don't like her that much.
Neither do I.
Like her at all.
Neither do I, I'm not gonna lie. I also feel like it's not her fault that we don't like her as well. Do you get what I mean? It's
I agree.
She was dealt.
I agree.
She was dealt some shitty parents, you know, like and some like very poor views.
And she's very young. Much of her like narration is colored by like her mom.
Yeah, and she seems very like naive and susceptible to like pressures, like social pressures and things like that. So
very much so. Yeah. So like this point of view with her in chapter 3, it starts off with her like fretting about her credit score, which I actually wanted to ask you about this. How are credit scores handled where you live?
I mean, they exist. What do you mean? Yeah. So like,
I'm just wondering if they're like notably different in the UK than they are in the States.
Well, it depends on, because I think there's like two like measurements of credit score. There's two separate ones. And I think the most common one that I understand is an average credit score is in like the 600-500 range. Like that's an average. But then like a good credit score is in like the 700-800s. So.
Okay. So that sounds about normal for where we are. Because like in the States, the maximum your credit score can possibly be is 850.
Yeah.
The highest my credit score ever was, and this was like right before I got a house, was 765.
Okay.
So Mandy is fretting about how like her credit score it's like, I don't know, like in the low 500s. You know. Oh, it's 514. Yeah. I wrote down what her credit score was. Her credit score is 514. And she's just like, I'll never be able to get a house or a car. And you know what? She's right. Like, with a credit score like that, you're not getting a house.
I mean,
it's just not happening.
You probably could get a car, but with, like, dirt interest, you know? Like, absolute garbage APR, you know?
Mm-hmm. Like, my credit score, honestly, right now, it's not too much higher than hers. Like, mine's, like, about 580 at the moment.
That's
like,
fair.
I'm not going to be trying to get anything with that kind of credit score.
Yeah.
But you know, so she's got a bad credit score, but like she's also like, another thing about her character is she's in a lot of debt. Like
she's hit a bad spot, you know.
She's hit a bad patch.
Yeah, bad patch. Yeah. That's the one.
A bad patch. Like there's this whole thing about like how like it's just this conservative mindset that she's filled with. But then there's like the double think of, oh, but you know, she's just in a bad patch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the best. She doesn't want to be one of those people.
She doesn't want to be one of those people that takes and takes and takes and never gives back. She's not one of those people. She's
drain
just trying to
on
get
society.
by.
Yeah.
She's not a drain on society. And like there was something though that just, there was one thing that clued me in that made me think, man, this character's kind of dumb. And maybe it's not fair, but like there was this bit about how like she only has like a few things bookmarked in Firefox, a free browser, thank goodness. And I was just like, what browser isn't free?
Yeah, I was wondering that. I think another flag for me was when, I don't know, it was her, when she was on about like speaking to a coworker about like the fact that creditors are like chasing her up and stuff, and like they're so mean on the phone, and like they wouldn't lie to you to, it's like that level of, I don't think it's necessarily her being dumb as much as it's her just being like really naive.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe she's very trusting.
How old is she? Did they say?
I don't know. I imagine she can't be older than 22.
Yeah, I was thinking like 20.
Like she cannot be older than 22. I would not be surprised if she was 20.
Yeah.
Like, at all. And she works at like a grocery store or something, and like her boss is a creep.
Yeah. But like the bit that was really fucking weird about that was when she was like, "Oh, it's my own fault that he's gonna creep on me today." I was like, that's so messed up.
It is. And so she's like, "Oh, I'm late for work." So she just grabs her shit and then just runs off. And she's like, "My boss is gonna creep on me, changing out of my sundress, but it's my own fault because I got distracted looking at my credit score."
Yeah, that's some like conservative parent BS. That is. That's like, yeah.
This episode of Functionally Literate is brought to you by me. I made this show. And I have a very, very special guest today, as you may have noticed. It is Jake.
Hello. How you doing?
Tell the people about you, Jake.
I am a musician, composer, music producer, media professional. I run a media company. I'm launching my own podcast. I'm doing lots of things. So, yeah, that's about me.
I, at the beginning or end of pretty much every episode, I always plug your album, Wasting Time. And I'm going to do that again. I always do that. Is there anything else that I can plug?
Ooh, so you can plug my media production company, Be Seen Media. So the website is beseen.media. Without a hyphen, and it's spelled like B and then SCENE. I'm also with the podcast that I'm launching. I'm currently setting up social channels for that. So hopefully by the time this goes out, I will have social media that people can go follow to listen to podcasts about music. There'll be live sessions and lots of different cool things. So
cool. And then while we're at it, in my episode descriptions, whenever I plug your album, I always include a Spotify link.
Yes.
Would you prefer I do it a different way?
So Spotify is the main platform that I push. But it's available everywhere. So the whole album is on SoundCloud for people who don't have Spotify subscriptions. It's also on Deezer and Tidal and Apple Music and all platforms. It's on YouTube as well, I think. So yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you can also check out like my Instagram. So I'm posting a lot of stuff on Instagram. I got a new song that should be coming out soon that I just sort of like on the sly announced. I'm still working on it, but yeah, it should be done soon.
Okay. Back to the show.
So dark. Like it's such a, for like what was like kind of almost like a throwaway line, just like a very in passing. It moves on very quickly after that. Is it quite?
There's a lot of
talent,
kind of dark stuff in there.
Yeah.
But then we're not really given any time to dwell on it though in the narration because then it shifts back to Nate, who he's moving in. And there's this guy, I think his name was, what was it, Carl?
Oh yeah, the guy that was helping him move in.
No, well,
No?
so that guy.
Oh,
his
the guy
name
that
is
was
Sean.
leaving number 5, Carl. Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
guy moving out. I think his name is Carl.
Yeah.
So like, as he and Sean are like moving his stuff in, like he meets Carl, and Carl is just like, I am moving out. Like, honestly, if I could have broken my lease, I'd have moved out sooner.
Yeah. And this is where, like, the enigma of number 5 appears. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, like...
He could never get a good night's sleep.
Yeah. And then you wonder
just like-
whether... I mean, I kind of, like, at that point was wondering whether, is that the whole building? Or is that just the room that guy was staying in? What is around that room? What's in the walls? Like, what, like...
Yeah.
Where are the goblin people? No.
But he does kind of give the guy he does kind of give Nate some good advice. Like he says, like, the Thai place nearby is good, you just have to ask them to make things hot.
Yeah.
And it's like, what does that mean? Like, why would you have to specifically ask them to make things hot? Do they just make it too cold?
Oh, I think he meant spice.
Oh, I get what you mean.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah,
more
like
sense.
yeah, because Thai curry, and like some places, it's like you need to make them spicy enough that you can't.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. It's like, oh, if I can't taste because it's so spicy, you know.
I get you. That
Yeah.
makes more sense.
Yeah,
actually. So they're moving this stuff in, and then they meet the building manager, Oscar.
Yes, they do.
What are your thoughts about that guy? Like, your first impression of him when you were first going through the book?
So my first impression of Oscar was, I don't know. There's something off about all of them, though, isn't there? Like, that was I was like, there's something off about him. There was something off about Tony. You know, there's this guy who was moving out of one of the rooms who's like, I couldn't get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
I also kind of liked him, though. I'm not going to lie. I felt like...
You liked him?
A little bit.
He was a little bit of a jerk, but kind of like in a way that made sense.
Yeah, exactly. And it was they kind of showed that he had a sense of humor when Nate was about his friend, was like, was it like testing has proved that he's
like,
an idiot.
Don't worry,
you know?
repeated testing has proved that he's an idiot.
Yeah, and then you can see that smiles.
Kind of mollified him.
Yeah.
And then he made they talked about the elevator briefly, and like as I recall, Oscar was apologetic about the elevator not working, and then Nate was like, "Oh, Tony said that it should be fixed up by now," and he's just so dismissive. He's like, "The elevator has never worked.
It's not worked a single day."
I have lived here for 23 years, 19 as building manager. That elevator has never worked once."
Yes. And
like,
I was
damn.
like, Tony, you motherfucker.
You just wanted a fucking sale. You bitch.
I would be livid. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
I would be like, that's so... I'd be fuming. Carrying sofas up. How many floors was the building as well? Which floor is he on? Do you know?
It's 3 floors, and the third floor is where he lives.
Yeah, so carrying sofas and nonsense up 3 flights.
Entertainment units and all that. Yeah.
I'd be fuming.
So they as they're moving this stuff, like Sean and Nate, they notice the door to 23 doesn't have a doorknob.
Yes.
Nate is worried that he accidentally whacked it off while they were moving his couch. Sean was like, no, I didn't hit it. I didn't hear you hit it. I don't think so. And then Sean speculates that probably people working on the building removed the doorknob so nobody would mess around in there.
That is a bit suspicious.
Yeah. And so then they're just like, all right, well, we didn't do it, so we're just gonna quietly away.
Yeah. Yeah, just ignore it. Brush it under the rug.
The thing that I thought was interesting about this chapter, honestly, was Sean. Because he's never in this book again after this.
That is interesting.
Like,
I mean,
it's the thing that I thought was interesting was, like, even though you only see him for, like, this fragment of a chapter, he feels like a complete character, right? Like, he's like, hey, I'm finally moving back to the Bay. Oh, this sucks. I'm stuck with the lovebirds for 2 weeks. Can I use your boxes if we get the rest of your stuff moved in?
Yeah, it
You know?
was... And he also, like, the dynamic and the way that it was written between the two characters felt like they knew each other for... years.
Time.
Yeah, and like they were living together, and it has that vibe. Even though he never comes up again. Well, not until chapter 13 at least. I don't know, like past that point.
As I recall, I don't think he comes up again.
He's one of the gremlins in the wall. That's what it is. It's just
I just thought it was like an interesting window into what Nate's life was like before he moved into this building.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. I get you. The parking sucks, apparently. That is a killer.
Yeah,
that would genuinely be a killer.
Carl warned that the parking sucked, and Sean was like, "You're gonna fucking hate living here in a few weeks once you realize how bad the parking is."
Yeah.
Chapter 4: How Nate became acquainted with his studio.
So we get a couple nuggets here, right? Like, he's getting himself situated. He discovers there's an empty space behind his closet. He assumes that it's like a water shut off to the bathroom, but he doesn't like investigate it further. He just kind of like knocks on the back of his closet and like he can feel that it's a hollow space, but he doesn't like bother figuring out what it's about.
That's really interesting, because even though I've listened to it 8 times, I somehow missed that.
It's so innocuous. Like, it's like at the very beginning, and like the chapter is you immediately focus on the big thing about this chapter, right? Like it's such an innocuous thing, but like he assumes that it's like a water shut off to the bathroom, and like probably whenever people have to do work on the building, they have to like shut off the whole thing now, is like what he's thinking. And then, he goes into the kitchen, he's messing around in there, he turns on the bulb, it doesn't work, and then he realizes, wait, it's a black light. And so that's what the whole chapter is about. It's about, like, this fucking black light, because he switches out the bulb, and it's still a black light. And, like, this was such a relatable moment.
It was...
Like, he switched out the bulb, and he was like, shit, I'm an idiot, I put the old bulb back in.
Yeah, it was so well written, because I was like, I like thought he had. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
I like, not for a second until the reveal did I think that, he had like, I thought that it was a black light bulb until they discussed that it wasn't. And they reveal kind of like after, I think he swaps it around like 2 or 3 times, and he stays on the counter as well. The description of him like staying on the counter so he doesn't have to keep climbing up and down and like turning the light switch on and off with his foot is so real. And it also kind of like shows how small his apartment actually is, So, and then it's like it's like the light doesn't seem to be emitting like black light in a very bright sense, though, based on the description. It's not
you had
like
to actually look closely to notice, like, oh, there's a weird shine on my fingernails and on the countertop.
Exactly.
Like, at first, he thought the light was just broken.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting detail. Do you think that the space behind the cupboard that they mentioned very briefly and I missed?
Behind in the closet.
Yeah. I think I might be onto something with this people living in the walls thing. I'm starting to because I missed that, but I feel like it might actually be, a thing.
Feel like this supports your hypothesis that there's gremlins living in the walls.
Well, they might. I mean, the gremlins is me just like joking around, but could be people living in the walls. There seems to be a lot of like spaces that are inaccessible that would be large spaces. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I do get what you mean. the big question is, what do you think is going on with Nate's apartment? Specifically, this black light. Like, what do you think is up with this kitchen fixture that no matter what light bulb you put in it, is a black light?
I don't know. Like, that sounds like I was gonna say something like really profound and like I had a very like real theory about this, but like genuinely, because I don't think because I thought about it like quite a bit after listening to this chapter, and I don't think. Because all the theories about, like, maybe it's a current thing, maybe it's, like, a low power or, like, whatever it is. That's not how that works. Like, least, I mean, I don't know enough to know that that's not how it works, but I'm fairly certain that you can't just, like, change the power that's going through a bulb and turn it into a backlight.
Black light.
Yeah.
No. Like, that's not a thing. Like, I thought about this, too. Like, there is no such thing as a light fixture that can turn a normal light bulb into a black light. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and...
It's very bizarre.
It is very bizarre. But it's also, like, I don't think... It doesn't hit me as, like, oh, it's a normal black light either. So I don't think it's necessarily turning into, like, a normal black light. But it's
normal black lights are purple when you turn them on. But I don't think that was described here.
No, it wasn't. Because the room was still in utter blackness. It was just certain things that were, like, very white were getting, like, highlighted like black lights would.
Yeah.
But then you're also not getting, like, because it's a kitchen, he's not, like, seeing highlighted stains on countertops and stuff either. He's just seeing, like, little... Which makes me think that it's not, like, fully a black light. Yeah.
You think it's something else going on with that thing?
Yeah. I don't think it's, like, a real black light. I think it's just something I don't know. But yeah, it's very strange.
Chapter 5. How Nate lightly snooped around while washing his laundry.
So, this chapter is, it kind of focuses on two things. We learn a bit about Nate's work and a little bit more about the building.
His boss.
So, fuck Eddie. Like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Like, that man, he is the perfect example of shitty middle management.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very...
Fuck that guy, man.
I mean, anybody that, like, I don't know, calls you on, like, a weekend or during your time off and expects you to, like, reply. It's just a bit cursed.
But what I loved was, like, Nate internally, like, his like, way of managing Eddie. Like, the thing specifically that made me realize, like, how ineffectual Eddie is as a boss is when Nate relaxes because Eddie is frustrated and is like, I called you 3 times. And he's just like, okay. He didn't come to bug me about this until after lunch, so it wasn't anything important.
Yeah.
He called me 3 times and didn't even remember it until after lunch. So the only reason he brought it up is because it annoyed him.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't about anything important. And I don't think it actually even came up what he called Nate about.
Yeah. I think it's also kind of like, I wonder how many people actually have, like, the ability to calculate social behavior like that, to, like, be able to relax in those situations. Do you get what I mean?
I wonder, too. Like, I don't think I would have, like, thought about it in that way.
Yeah.
Personally. I think I would have just been annoyed that my boss had the audacity to call me 3 times when I wasn't working.
That's true. That's very true. I think, yeah, that is. I don't know. I wouldn't pick up either. I'd be like, oh no, it's a new building, brick walls.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. He thought about it. He was just like, you know what? I bet it's my building. It's really old.
Yeah.
Also, this poor bastard makes $9.25 an hour.
I know.
Like,
That's
even
brutal.
Adjusting for inflation in the modern day, that is like $12.63 an hour.
Yeah, that's pretty.
It's not good.
It's not.
It's not good. Not in LA. Like that's poverty wages.
Yeah. Yeah, that is that's really bad.
Yeah. And like, man, his work life is just shit. Right? Like, it's very boring. He works for a magazine. He works in a cubicle. He's a temp agent. But like, there's this understanding that he will never be full-time, even though they will try to squeeze full-time hours out of him. And they've never offered, and he's never going to ask. Like, it's an unspoken agreement that, like, he will never be full-time.
Yeah, it's very strange. He also has no idea what the magazine actually is. He's just like,
Nor does he care.
True, he doesn't care. He's like, I will just put the data into the machine. And that is,
Like, as I recall, his job is to determine if people in the database are still subscribers.
Yeah.
Like, that's his job. Like, that's so fucking dumb.
Yeah, it is. It is a bit.
Yeah. But then, anyway, so he goes back home, and he realizes, like, man, parking's a bitch. Like, it takes him forever to find a place to park.
Yeah.
And then, when he is approaching the building, he finds a cornerstone plaque on his building that says 1894 WNAPTK. Like, he doesn't understand the significance of that at all, but, like, it was notable enough for him to just notice.
Yeah, and it mentions because it's, like, the headstone of the building, you know, and the building's so old, he was, like, expecting something more grand.
More.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like there might be. Like, I get the vibe that there is something, like, much more significant about the building as far as, like, its historical value and things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's a Thursday night. He realizes he needs to do laundry. And so while he's doing that, he meets another neighbor in the laundry room, Roger. So what is your first impression of Roger?
Oh, remind me how this interaction goes, and then I'll tell you my opinion, because I can't really remember Roger too much.
So Roger was like, he was laying down on some of the seats with like his hand over, like his arm over his eyes, and like, you know, he's just waiting on his laundry too. And then they chat a bit, like, you know, he's fairly friendly, you know, he lives in number 7. He, like, Nate asks him what he thinks about the building, and Roger's like, "What's not to like? Rent's cheap. It's near the near
I remember.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
I'm able to easily get to and from work and go do my thing on the weekends. Like, it's you know, all my stuff is here. It's great."
Yeah, and I think so he just seemed normal to me. He was one of the ones that seemed
guy.
He just seems like a normal guy. And he was he mentions that, like, his job is, like, crazy busy. He works like 90 hours. So
he worked 70 hours.
70 hours. Sorry, 70 hours. Which I wonder whether he is a doctor.
No, he's a grip.
Oh, a grip. Yeah, that's what it was. Damn. I'm dumb.
Yeah.
I'm dumb. I forgot he mentions that.
Grip.
This is why I should have taken notes, because...
That's fine. I took notes.
Yeah. But
no, he, like, what he says is, like, when Nate's like, so, wait, I don't understand. What's the difference between your job and, like, you know, one of the electricians? And he's basically like, those guys handle the lights, grips handle the shadows. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
It seems quite suspicious, though, given everything that's going on in this building, you know?
Yeah. And so, like, he goes to use one of the washers, but Roger specifically warns him not to use, like, the one on the far left because it doesn't spin fast enough, so everything is, like, wet. Like, not damp, but wet.
Yeah.
So he doesn't use it. See, this is the thing, right? Like, it's little things like this. It's like, well, that's such a normal thing. But then, like, the washers are 50 cents to use. Like, when I was a kid going to the laundromat, washers were like $1.25 to use.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. Yeah. It's also cheap.
It's also cheap. It's so weird. And so then, like, you know, while he's waiting on his laundry to wash, he starts, like, looking around. He investigates the cellar. and he sees another green cockroach. And he notices while wandering around, there's like a pair of like old, elegant doors chained shut with like a big block of a padlock.
Yeah.
And like that's really it.
Which door was that?
It was I'm not super clear on like what these doors were. They were like double doors. They were like French doors. Like they stood out because they looked too fancy for the building.
That's fair. See, yeah, it's little details like that I found that I've missed a couple of things, you know, like just
That's
a
fine.
handful of different things, but which is quite upsetting because I listened to it 8 times.
Well, the thing about books like these is there's a lot of red herrings.
Yeah,
right? Like some things will stand out to you, and it's like, what the fuck is that about? And then other things won't.
Yeah. It's very, everything seems like it could be an indicator of something more. And like the names of things and the names of the people and everything kind of like stand out to me.
Chapter 6. How Nate scoped out the building's roof, and how he did not scope out his neighbor Zila.
For instance, Zila.
True. Zila's name. What even is Zila? So should I Google it? Should I look it up right now?
Zila?
Yeah, what does it mean?
What does Zila mean? Oh, I don't know.
How do you spell that?
Anything.
How do you spell it?
Xela, I think.
Zila. Name. Meaning. Angel.
Means angel.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it means angel. I know. I wonder what she's gonna do that's gonna be, angel-like.
Well, so Zila, it is introduced by... So Nate decides that he wants to go check out, like, the sunroof, right?
Yes.
Because there's a deck on the roof, and there's, like, a fire pit and all that, so he goes to check it out. He sees on his way up a fridge magnet, a blue X, and it's holding on the door a note that says, Zila is here. Nate doesn't get what it means. So he just goes right on.
I don't blame him, to be honest with you.
Me neither. Like that, is like just being a normal guy, seeing a note that says Zila is here. Like, I don't blame him for not understanding that Zila is a person's name.
Yes. True.
But so like he goes up, he sees he sees the roof has a fire pit, he sees it's got a sun deck, he sees it's got this big brick structure. I believe it's described as though someone had started building another floor and then gave up partway.
Yeah, it sounds very large. Like all of the descriptions of it seems like it's a very big room just awkwardly built in like a weird place on the roof, yeah.
And so, he, like, while he's up there, this woman just, like, pipes up, and he looks at her, and she's topless. And so then he immediately does the gracious guy thing, and, like, looks like anywhere else.
Yeah. To be fair, he does not, like, break that, like, concentration of, I will not look. The whole time he's just... And she is very like, they're just tits. Calm down.
They're just tits. Yeah. It's fine. Yeah, like it's such a funny interaction. And I read this book in 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
So I was in high school. So I remember when I first read this, I was fantasizing. Like a topless artist with blue hair and blue eyebrows, like.
Yeah, I get you. I think the most jarring thing about the description that was given, right, for her, is the fact that her eyebrows are blue.
Yeah.
That is the weirdest thing about that whole situation. Genuinely. Who dyes their eyebrows,
Who dyes their fucking eyebrows?
Exactly. Zila does, yeah.
Yeah. No, but yeah, so like he just won't look at her, and she's like, fine. And then she like covers up, and she's like, okay, they won't offend you anymore. But there was also like a little bit in there that I found funny where she's like, they're just tits. You've seen tits before, right? And he's like, 2 times. 3 if you count the internet.
Yes. He's quite witty, and like as a character, I think that there's like a couple of indications that he is I guess smarter and more inquisitive than like the average person, I guess, you know, like the way that he was able to handle his boss and not freak out, you know, and like he was witty in the interaction with his boss as well about like using the builder as like a bunker if war ever breaks out or whatever, you know. It's like
he did say that, and like one of his coworkers got a chuckle out of that.
Yeah, exactly. So he's quite a smart and witty guy, it seems. But then as well, so like they start talking about like the building a little bit, I think.
A little bit.
Yeah, and what was it? On the roof, that giant like room that they've got, he asks what it is, and she's like, Oscar said it's something to do with the elevator. It's like where the elevator's mechanics are held, and they note. Well, Nate notes that it looks like it's a bit too big. And the explanation for that is like, things were just bigger when everything was older, you know?
Yeah, like everything was just bigger back then. And she just doesn't think anything of it. And it's like, oh, okay. And that's just how the chapter ends. It's just like, they built things bigger back then.
Yeah.
So... Well, there was something else about this chapter that I made note of. So something about this conversation that stood out to me the first time I ever read it.
Okay.
Like it actually was something that stuck with me. She explained, like, she's like, guess what I do? And he figures out that she's an artist, and she's like, she even calls him Sherlock because like he sees like the paint on her sleeve, so he assumes that she's an artist. And she's like, I got it in one, and she's like, you know, most people just see the tits and assume that like I'm a stripper. Although I think you would have been one of the classy ones and would have said exotic dancer.
That's another kind of like point out for kind of like what I was saying about they indicate consistently that he's much more observant and like more intelligent than like the average person, you know, or like that's kind of the direction that they're trying to point in.
But the thing that stood out to me was when she talks about having to go to work, like when she's getting a tan in before she goes to work, he's like, oh, you got a commission? You got a deadline or something? And she's like, that's sweet, but no, I work at a coffee shop. And he's like, I thought you were an artist. And what she said was, art is what I do, but it's not my job.
Yeah.
Like, at the time, I couldn't figure out why that stood out to me, but like I found it really profound at the time, like the idea that like what you do in life isn't how you make money. Like that was very impactful for me as a teenager.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. And like people's calling in lives and the things that they love to do might not always be the thing that they end up doing for money. I mean, I kind of feel like people can make money doing like all of the things that they love with just like, you know, hustle vibes. No, I don't. I'm not one. I'm up at 5 a.m. every day. I go to the gym, I do my emails, then I go to the gym again, and then I do some more emails, and then it's 5:10. You know, like one of those people. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up this episode. But we've got the beginnings of a mystery assembling.
Yes.
Right? Like we've got an enemy, the family. Someone's dead, but we don't know who or if the family found them. We've got a building with cheap apartments and weird vibes. We've got a perpetual blacklight. We've got green cockroaches. We've got padlocked double doors. We've got a door that's got 2 like padlocks on it. Like we've got 2 locked doors. We've got a giant room up on the roof.
We've got gremlins in the walls.
It's probably not enough to come up.
It said we've got gremlins in the walls.
We may have gremlins in the walls, so it's probably not enough to come up with a hypothesis.
No, it's not yet.
Like you don't feel like you've got enough.
No, and I kind of felt like at this point I still hadn't really not enough interesting things, like not enough of a development in the direction of things being done to work out what's going on with the building had happened for me to feel like I was fully invested at this point.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, but that was about to change.
Fully invested, it would be in these next few chapters.
Yes, yeah, that changed in the next couple of chapters. So next episode, find out why I became intrigued